Hello there. How are you doing? It's Tuesday and it's time for the English Language Club live. Let us know. Give us a thumbs up if you can hear us okay. We've got quite a few people already online, which is really nice. Nice to see some of the regulars. Lolly is here. We've got Raw and Mudasir. Dev Stevens, hi there, how are you doing in India? AJ's here in Monaco. Jax from Rwanda. And Awaz Saeed from Kurdistan, Iraq. I am Colin. I'm here in the UK. And as always, my good friend Tony is here. He is in Canada. So, yes, great. So, we've got a couple of questions already, but we need some more. So get those questions coming in as quick as you can, and we will try to cover as many of them as possible today. So let's see. So the first question, Mudasir had one before we got started. What are the correct occasions to use also and to? So, two similar words, but they are distinct. They do have distinctly different uses. So, can you explain that, Tony?
Well, the main thing between also and to is that also comes before whatever you're talking about, and to comes after. So you would say, we had apples and also bananas, or you said we had apples, but we had bananas too.
Yeah.
That's the main difference. In terms of any meaning difference, do they mean something different? I mean, also
No.
To is very informal, so you don't use to in formal speech as much. You would say as well, but I think it still goes after. It's used exactly the same as to.
Yes.
But I don't know if there's any difference really.
Now,
it just really depends when you're saying the sentence. Does it make sense with the flow to add something before what you're talking about or after? To is usually kind of tacked on to the end of a sentence. So if for whatever reason that wouldn't sound good at the end of a sentence, that's when you would use also instead.
Yeah, now that is actually a really good question, because thinking about it now, I can definitely imagine, and because I know that a lot of my students in the past use also when they should be using to. I think
yes.
all people we do have a tendency to overuse also. So especially at the end of a sentence. So if you're saying I like pizza, and I also like hamburgers, that's correct. But it's not correct to say I like pizzas and I like hamburgers also. That's when you use to. I mean,
It's not incorrect, but it's not normal. It's not the way it is commonly used.
Yeah.
Putting also at the end of a sentence is kind of poetic and stuff like that. It's not the way you would normally the way you normally talk.
It's much better to use to there.
Yes, to at the end of a sentence. If you're trying to sound conversational and informal, that's the best way to use it. Yeah. So this one is tricky. Generally speaking, I would lean towards using to. If you're not sure, put to at the end of a sentence, because that's just way more common. If you're not sure which one of those to use.
Yeah, good. That's a good question, because it's. I think it's quite a simple rule, but it is something that people do make a lot of mistakes with. So I hope that's helpful, Mudasir. Let us know in the comments, and if you've got any more questions, keep them coming in. We have got another one. Dev Stevens says, how can I link the sentence, what are you doing? Especially in British English. What are link into what sound? Can you help me? So this, you're referring to the pronunciation, linking the words. Yes, because that is a sentence where we do sort of contract quite a lot. So I would say, what are you doing? It's like the T, so we soften the T, and R becomes just what are you doing? And you as well is just you. What are you doing?
Yes.
And also, you could just say, instead of what are you doing, you can say what are you doing?
That's true.
So yeah, I hope that's helpful. But yes, because that's a very common sentence and it's got very common words. So the verb to be is very, the most common verb, and it's the most irregular. So it also gets contracted a lot officially. But this is sort of, I guess, a unofficial way of contracting. I mean, would you even call that a contraction? Is that correct to call that a contraction, Tony? I guess it.
We've talked about these words before, and I can't, just for whatever reason, I'm feeling muzzy this morning. The word isn't jumping to head, but we talked about this a lot.
Yeah.
Where when you get different sounds together in a sentence and they kind of begin to smush together, it's not a contraction, because a contraction specifically refers to when you change the spelling. So since we're not changing the spelling here, sometimes you do see doin. With the G dropped and an apostrophe, that would be a contraction, because you're dropping out a letter and replacing it with an apostrophe. But when you say what are, and just for, if you want the American pronunciation, it's what are you doing? So we do pronounce that R there. What are you doing?
Okay.
So what to are or isn't exactly it's not an official contraction. So it's just these blending of sounds that go closely together. But it's basically the same concept. It's funny that we have official contractions in English that are widely accepted, and then we have other contractions that if you use them in an English class, you get yelled at. But there isn't really necessarily a difference. In fact, Colin and I the other day were just commenting on how the word "its" is really weird in this way. If you use "its" with an apostrophe, if it's a contraction, like it's my turn or whatever, short for "it is," but you don't use "its." You use "its" without an apostrophe when it's the possessive. Even though I think we believe that the possessive is more fundamental than the contraction. But for whatever reason,
it's just really confusing, because when you make normally the possessive S does have the apostrophe,
yes,
but not on it, only on this is Colin's microphone, or that is Tony's beard. I love Tony's beard. Yeah.
So for whatever reason, of all the things that English has inconsistencies and doesn't really have hard rules about, for some reason, contractions are in the hard rules department, where there's an accepted list of contractions. Now, this is always changing, but over the course of 50 years or so. So certainly new contractions will be being added to the list of acceptable ones.
Yeah.
But even when they're not, we still pronounce them. So we still say whatter or whatta. Even though there's not an official contraction where you would take out the A, kind of like when you're saying they are, right, or we are, you apostrophe and take out the A, and you get an official contraction. So we don't write them unless it's one of the official contractions, but you still pronounce it as if it were a contraction, exactly the same as if it were a contraction. Yeah.
Great. Okay. So I hope that's helpful. So yeah, now we got a question here from Awaz Saeed. How do we understand the C when it's pronounced
as a K or an S?
K or an S sound. Yeah. Well, that's a really good question, and I think it's quite a simple answer. Basically,
it's a simple answer, but with any of the simple rules in English, it has a lot of exceptions.
Yeah. Yeah.
The simple answer is, I think it's EI. If it's before an E or an I or a Y that's pretending to be an E or an I, then it makes an S sound. Otherwise, officially, it makes a K sound. Yeah. But again, it depends on the language, the root language the word came from, really. But that's your general answer.
That general rule covers the majority of it. So that
if it comes before an E, an I, or a Y, then it makes a S sound.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, since studying phonetics, I think we should just get rid of the letter C and just use the letter K or S. Some people I've said that to start spelling my name with a K. But yeah, I mean, it's a weird thing, isn't it? The letter C.
The C has a really crazy and weird history. The word that's the letter that's strange here isn't actually the C, it's the K. So in English we use the Latin alphabet, And Latin does not technically have a K.
Okay.
The K only exists to spell Greek words because Greek has the letter K, but not the letter C. So what happened is, as in Latin, all well-educated Romans learned Greek, and so they wanted to be able to spell Greek words, and so they started using the letter K until it became a part of their alphabet, but it doesn't appear in any Latin words. So so the K is, and I find it interesting because it means you can look at a word and tell whether it, generally speaking, comes from a Latin background or a Greek background by whether or not it has a K or a C. But it's a good example of how English has just kind of like taken things into it over time, and it's got a lot of extra stuff.
Yeah.
And that's why there's 2 different ways to say also, or 3 or 4 different ways, or 2 different ways to say under. I mean, poets love it, but it makes it harder to learn the language.
It does sort of mean we have a richer vocabulary, but then some of those words are not redundant, but what's the word? Like they're duplicated. We have lots of words that mean the same thing. But I guess it also makes things easier for people to learn because there's a higher chance that one of the words is more similar to a word in their language.
If you took out K, then anybody who speaks is coming from Greek or Armenian or Russian or any of the Slavic languages that got their alphabet from Cyrillic would no longer be able. Then suddenly you'd be taking away the fact that they recognize those words, right? So it's a weird thing. You could streamline English for one group of people and make it easier for that group, but then you might be making it harder for other groups of people. So it's funny.
So it's just who knows that kind of thing other than you, Tony. I mean, so we're really lucky to have someone with such amazing knowledge as Tony on there. I mean, I was going to give a much simpler answer just after E or I, but it's so interesting to get all the history of the words and things. And so yes, if you do like hearing about all this sort of thing that Tony knows about, give us a thumbs up in the give this video a thumbs up, and if you're not subscribed already, make sure you subscribe. And if you're joining us for the first time, we do this every Tuesday. We've done it every Tuesday for the last 4 months, or more or less, I think. So it's going, and it's really fun. So let's move on. So there's another great question here from Bal. He says, "Is going in I look forward to going there a gerund?" The answer
great
is
question.
Yes.
So it is.
Yes,
it's an infinitive because it had
to.
No. You're right.
Yeah,
you're right,
I look
definitely.
forward to. So the 2 is part
This
of
is a gerund.
the 2 is part of forward. I look forward to.
It's part of forward.
Yeah.
It's
a phrasal verb to look forward. I look forward to. Is that right?
See, I think this is a bit of an edge case because it's definitely fulfilling the function of an infinitive. I think it's because it has the phrasal verb before it that it's not. So a gerund is anytime, generally speaking, a gerund means that's the noun for that action, right? So going, if you say I like going places, going is the action of to go, right?
Yeah, but it's not the verb in that sentence because I like is the verb. Right?
So generally speaking, if the word is being used for the name of the action of that verb, like I like running, or I have been, or I, like that kind of thing. That's
I've been walking all day.
I have. Well, then that would be
that's passive. Is that passive?
Perfect continuous.
Perfect continuous. So of course. That's not.
Generally speaking, so here's the secret to knowing whether it's actually like being used as a verb. If you see the ing form of a verb, it will virtually always have the verb be in front of it. It could be being, been, been,
was,
are, were. But if it has the ing and it has that before it, then you know it's a continuous verb. It's actually the verb. If it doesn't have that, then it's either going to be a gerund or a participle, which I love participles, but they're complicated. One of these days we'll have to have a whole maybe discussion about them. But generally speaking, you know it's a gerund if it's being used as a noun and if it's referring to the name of that action.
Yeah.
So here you're talking about the fact that you look forward to, and then you have to name the action, right? Going somewhere, like the same way like I look forward to walking in the park. It's the name of the action. Yeah, this is a bit of an edge case here in this particular sentence, but it's yeah, it's an interesting question. Gerunds are fascinating part of language.
They are and they're not, because I mean, so is it the question is this a gerund? My question back to play devil's advocate would be, does it matter? I mean, as long as you know how to, to use that, as long as you know what that phrase means. I look forward to going there. I look forward to going on holiday. As long as you know how to use that correctly, you don't need to know that that's a gerund and that's the main verb, that's the verb, that's a gerund. I remember when I learned about gerunds, and it was in my first week of teaching English. And it was from a student told me about them. I hadn't learned really about gerunds before that, which is quite shameful almost. But it just goes to show.
You always learn more.
Yeah, you do learn a lot when you teach. Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
So it's I think I guess I mean it's a grammar term which is useful for. And it's useful to know these grammar terms if you are analysing the language, which we often are when we're learning. But like I always say, it's a tool. Grammar is a tool. So, and for some people, it's more useful than other people. So, if you do struggle with this sort of thing, then but you are. If you struggle with knowing which words are gerunds, but you can use the phrases perfectly well, I don't see, you don't need to know all the terms.
No. Princess Lavu, we just haven't gotten down to your question yet. We're just moving through the comments in order. So we will get to your question. Do we want to go ahead and answer that question?
Which one? The one that's retracted?
They retracted the question. The question
was about being an admin.
Yeah, what does it take to be an admin on this channel? And I think the key idea is we're not very large right now, so we don't have need for a bunch of different admins. But I think when things get a lot bigger, we will be needing to recruit admins. Yeah. So
we are hoping that yes, we will get a lot bigger. And once the course Inside English is out, we'll be doing a lot more of the time that we're spending will be on sort of more things that will bring more people in. But yeah, at the moment, like those of you who've been following us for a while know, we're really focusing on the writing at the moment, and we are making a lot of progress. We're actually very close to being able to film the first 4 units. So look out for that soon. Yes.
And please, if you have a question and we don't get to it, be patient. We move forward generally in order, but sometimes we'll answer a question later in the list that has to do with what we're talking about, has to do with an earlier question. But please be patient with us to get to your question. You can always ask again if you think we've genuinely missed it. Yeah. Yeah.
Great. Okay.
Actually, Jorge, speaking of which, Jorge Lopez has a comment about our talking about also and to. He's pointing out that it's about agreement, that if someone says, I like pizza, and you say I do too, you wouldn't say I also do, though I suppose you could in a way. So agreement is where you say something that matches kind of the pattern of what you said earlier. And this isn't a hard rule of like if you're not doing this, it's improper English. Though this is the kind of thing that if you're writing a paper for a university class or something, you want to be careful about. And so I think there's some truth to this, but I think generally speaking, the two, like we said earlier, it flows better to put to at the end of a sentence than to stick also in somewhere else. And I think that's where a lot of the difference comes from.
Great. So let's see. Have we got any more questions here? Lolly's asking about learn the ropes and learn the tricks of the trade. Do they mean the same thing? Well, yeah, similar.
They kind of mean opposite things, but in a very narrow context. They both mean learning how to do a job, whereas learning the ropes means learn enough to get by. What the ropes means is like the boundaries. So like what will keep you from going somewhere very dangerous. How to do your job safely and just be able to do it. Whereas learn the tricks of the trade means all of the kind of the secrets that you only get to know when you're in something. So that really is not about just knowing how to do your job, but knowing how to do your job the way other people do and well. So learn the ropes is getting started. Tricks of the trade means like you're getting advanced.
Yeah. So great, similar meaning, but tricks of the trade a bit more in depth. Great. Let me see. We don't really have any more questions.
I think we have a few. Let's see.
There's more comments on our previous answers.
Mohammed Reza Hamdard asks, hello, sir. What is the exact difference between personal passive and impersonal passive? Thanks. The personal passive, I think, is just the regular passive. When you say he was hit by a truck instead of he slammed into a truck or whatever you would say to say that actively. It's where the subject, instead of the thing that's acting, it's the thing that is being acted on, like that it's the action is happening to. Impersonal passive, though, is kind of where you're using passive because you want to avoid saying something. You're being indirect. And in English, being indirect is usually a way of being more polite, or at least less in your face. So you might say, it has been said that, and then go on to say something that you don't really want to you don't want to say, well, I think that dinosaurs had feathers or whatever. If you want to be indirect about it and not offend anyone, you would say, it has been said that, or we have heard, or something like that. You're just saying things to be indirect. And a little bit more polite. You use this a lot when you don't really know for sure, or you don't have evidence, or your argument is weak.
So what if you say the bank was robbed yesterday? Is that impersonal passive? Because we don't know who robbed the bank.
I don't think so. But the impersonal passive isn't so much about what the actual subject is, as that you're just intentionally being vague. So an example would be more like, it has been reported that the bank was robbed, right? Or police have reported that the bank was robbed, right? That's it. Again, you're not really.
Okay, it's where you're sort of, you're not saying you want to say something, but you don't want to say this is my opinion, because that might be confrontational. So to avoid confrontation, you're not saying this is my opinion, the bank was robbed. You're saying police have said that the bank was robbed. So it is a way of being less direct, less confrontational.
It's like if you have an issue that you want to bring up and you say, my friend has this problem, right? Or you want to share your opinion, a fact that you know, but instead of saying, well, did you know that, whatever, you say, well, I heard that, and then you say whatever. And so the impersonal passive, I'm not sure how connected to the idea of passive it really is, because passive is just passive. It's not like there's two kinds. It's still structured the same way. But the impersonal passive is this idea that you don't want to say something, so you just say, it exists out here, right? Yeah.
Okay, great. Now we've got another question just come in from, well, I would say ZV, but I guess you would say
Canada, ZV as well. No,
Canada, yeah, but you're American, so
yeah. Well, I've been
ZV, but I think ZV sounds better. Which one do you call yourself? ZV, or I guess probably ZV. That sounds cooler. Anyway, hello guys. What's the difference between advice about and advice on? I found these examples in the collocation dictionary. Advice about bringing up children, and can you give me some advice on where to buy good maps? But I still don't understand it. Okay. So, what is the difference between advice about and advice on?
I know the answer to this, but I'm not sure how useful it really will be. Advice on refers to a specific or narrow topic. Advice about refers to a broader topic. But like I said, like Zedvid points out, it's a collocation thing. So it's hard to know. It would just be what words it goes with. Yeah. So that's what collocation means. It means words that go together. So the example you give there about maps. Can you give me some advice on where to buy good maps? I guess also in that question you're asking for some specific information. Exactly.
You wouldn't say, or you might say, can you give me some advice about where to buy good maps? But when you do that, it makes the question much broader, as if you're asking, it's a much broader topic. So go on.
Yeah, like with collocation, the key is, and the thing about collocation is it does not always work the same across all different groups of people. You'll have different collocations sometimes in different areas. So the key to collocation is listen to the people around you that are speaking English. Like if you go to visit the UK, or you go to visit Scotland specifically, or you go to visit the US, or you go to visit Boston, listen to what the people around you are saying and use the same phrasing they do. Collocation is hard to, for most, it's like prepositions. It's hard to just memorize a list.
Yeah.
It's generally speaking, the only way you're really going to get the hang of them is by listening to a lot of English and patterning your speech to that. But yeah, I think that's the best we can do in terms of advice on this topic. Is on would be for very narrow, specific things. About would be for broader things. Yeah.
But also, I'm just thinking about that now. Would you say, you could say, that's all we can do about giving advice on this topic? By just saying this topic, but you could say that's all we can say for giving advice about
that, right? Because that becomes
that's broader, or
because now you're just saying broad, whereas on this topic is more narrow, right?
Yeah. So this topic, it sounds like quite a specific thing. So it sounds right. It collocates with advice,
but it's not even the word. So it's not even strictly collocation, because you could say giving you advice about, or giving you advice on this topic, or giving you advice on that topic. And it would still be, because it's narrow, it's not using on. But if we say just that, and that's the only advice we can give you about that. So it's I'm not even sure if collocation is really the right word in this case, because using the same word after it, depending on whether you continue that topic versus just that in the ending. So yeah, I think I'm going to stick by that advice. About for wide topics and on for narrow topics. Yeah.
Okay, well, let us know if that's helpful, ZV, and also let us know if we're pronouncing your name correctly.
Yes.
So Jorge's got another question. Back on gerunds, actually. On the case of gerunds, follows some specific structures such as prepositional adjective phrases, such as I'm addicted to drinking coffee, or I'm afraid of swimming in the sea, right? On the case of gerund.
So I'm not sure what the question is there.
Does it follow some specific structures? I think is the question, such as prepositional, adjectival phrases. But yeah, I mean, I'm addicted to I'm addicted to drinking coffee, or I'm afraid of swimming in the sea. Those sentences are correct, and they are gerunds in those sentences. Because, but the way I normally just identify a gerund is to I think is it what's the main verb, and if that verb in the ing form is not the main verb, but then I see that that's being used as a noun. Normally as the object of the sentence, then it's the normal. That's how we know it's a gerund. So yeah. Hope that's helpful. Not sure we answered you very well there, though. Jorge. Sorry about that. But ZV says we pronounce his name right, so that's great.
That's good.
And we're running out of questions now, so you need to get some more questions coming in. Lolly, you've been quiet today. You must have some more questions. You've normally got lots and lots of good ones.
I've got a former question that we can that we didn't get a chance to ask at the end of a former live stream, and it's actually from Lolly.
Oh, right.
So Lolly asked, when do we use the passive form with get instead of be? Thanks. So that's a really interesting question because passives are a little bit of they're not really that complicated in terms of just adding in an extra be, but then we've got this idea of throwing in a get. So what's the difference between the bank got robbed or the bank was robbed, right? Or I got thirsty as opposed to I was thirsty, right?
Yeah. So, but in those two examples, I got thirsty is you're just using got as the main verb and then using an adjective, whereas the bank got robbed, the bank was robbed, that's making a passive. So it's different. They're different grammatical structures in those two examples.
Yes, in a way, but the really that's a specific use of the word get, is to show that something happened to the subject, which is really what passive means, right? Is showing that something happened to the subject. So generally speaking, you can use get now. So for instance, in both of those situations, but let's go back to the one that's grammatically a passive. The bank was robbed, the bank got robbed. Obviously, both of those are fine. It's not that you ever would need to use get. There are certainly ones where it's more common. Someone got hit by a car. You don't say they were hit by a car as often. But generally speaking, you can always use be. Get is two things. It's more informal, and it's more impactful. It's more it's stronger, talking about how this affected the subject. The bank got robbed, or I was robbed is one thing, but I got robbed. It's a little bit more of a gut punch, so to speak. So there's never a situation where you can't use be, but there are situations where you can't use get. You can't use get with something like something that's not an action, something that's a status. And if you do, you can if that status is also an adjective. So you can say something like I got sick, but you don't. I'm trying to think of one that's not an action. A passive that isn't an action. Yeah, can't think of one.
It's so difficult when to think about examples like this off the top of our head when in the moment. As soon as or probably later on when we're thinking about something else, we'll think of lots of examples like this. It's always like this. But anyway, exactly. I think that's a good answer. Actually, I've got before we move on, we've got a good question here from Dev. We'll get to that in just 1 second. But yeah, I've got a funny story. I remember a conversation with my dad. I had this thing which he broke, and I didn't know about it. and I said to him, where's the thing? I think it was like a mixer in the kitchen for the kitchen, like a juice machine. I said, where's the juice machine? And he said, it got broken. And I was like, you mean you broke it, right? And he was like, yeah. So
like the impersonal passive, right? Where you're talking, you don't want to say who actually did it, and so you're being vague about it.
Yeah, because you're trying to hide the truth in that case. Yeah. Okay, Bao says, cuckoo, cake, kick when C is pronounced. Will the tongue touch the sides of the teeth? And I found out that C followed by E tend to be unclear, but by raising the front tongue, the sound got clearer. Okay. So will the tongue touch the sides of the teeth? Cuckoo. The sides of the teeth. Not really. No. But it does touch the top of the mouth. Got my my big mouth here. So when I say my tongue is sort of rubbing up the top of the mouth there. A little bit, but not at the front. Not at the front. Right at the back. So the tongue is sort of down at the front of the mouth, but at the back it sort of touches, like with the, if that's the top of my mouth, it's not the tip of the tongue, it's the top. Does that make sense? Is that how it feels for you, Tony, as well?
Yeah. Yes. At the same time, if the question is, does your tongue touch the sides of the teeth? I kind of just ran through some words. And for instance, when I say kick, my tongue does touch the sides of my teeth. We talked about this a while ago, that each sound on the IPA chart actually represents a kind of a range of different sounds. So I think that sometimes you will touch the sides of your tongue to the sides of your teeth in the back, but not for every. So when I just make the sound, I don't. But when I say kick, I do. So it's
But I don't think that touching the tongue touching the sides of the mouth is not a crucial part of making that sound. That's what I mean. Like, for example, in the word for the sound, it's crucial that your tongue touches your teeth. A lot of people say, I think this, or I thought that, when it should be I think. So if you're not saying it right, if you're not touching your tongue to your teeth. Now, your tongue may touch the sides of your teeth when you say cuckoo, but it's not necessarily wrong if you don't. That's not where the sound is coming from. I think the sound is coming from being pushed through that space, or you close that space, and it comes through when you open the space between the tongue and the top of the mouth, rather than the sides. Now, we skipped over Dev's question, so sorry about that. We will come back to that though. But have we covered the question about the k sound? I found out that C followed by E tend to be unclear, but raising the front tongue, the sound got clearer. Well, like we said, when it's followed by a E or a E, it often makes the S a S sound. So maybe by clearer you mean more of a sound. But so I hope that's helpful. I hope that's what we answered your question. I'm not sure what you did. And just quickly, you said, how do you pronounce the with the with the slashes? Now, we normally do that when we're showing we're talking about a phonetic symbol, but the C is not a phonetic symbol. We have the K because for the K and the S for the S. So yes, putting C like that in brackets, that doesn't mean anything. It's not a phonetic symbol, and like because the C can be pronounced in two different ways. But I didn't see. Then it says I mean K. Yeah. So how do you guys pronounce K? Okay, well I think we've just been pronouncing it quite a lot. And like I said, it's coming through the top of the mouth rather than the sides. Your tongue can touch the sides, but that's not a crucial part of it. Okay, let's get to Dev's question. He says, does American English have a short vowel O, as in dog? I have quite recently heard Biden say the word fraud with O sound. But most Americans do pronounce it with a long R sound, like fraud.
Yes, that is correct.
So, but it wouldn't be... He wouldn't have said fraud.
So the thing about it, so fraud, yes, that is how we pronounce it in American English, fraud. However, Biden is from Philadelphia, and so he has a Philadelphia accent. Philadelphia accents it's not very strong, but Philadelphia accent is not considered one of the more proper accents. So he will pronounce some words different from even the proper pronunciation, just because that's his local accent. Yeah, he's not an English teacher.
Yeah, but I think also fraud. It's not fraud. The O sound is O. It's not O. Like fraud, like you're saying, fraud.
No, fraud. Yeah. Different. Yeah.
So that's not O.
It's not the same as dog. Fraud.
No. So it's or.
But if he said fraud, I don't doubt that at all. That sounds vaguely Philadelphian. But that's not how the word is pronounced. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I hope that's helpful. Let's see. Does American English? Yeah. So I mean, I've seen versions of the phonetic chart of the like an American version which doesn't have the O sound on it. So
that same O sound?
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
Dog or fraud? Not the same.
No, because that's or. That's not O.
Right.
That's or fraud, dog. I mean, how do you say dog?
Dog.
So dog. It's more of an R than an O.
But when that doesn't sound like an alien sound to me. It sounds like something that I would say. I just can't think of a word that has it. Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't sound odd. It doesn't sound...
Yeah. So again, I think it's one of these edge cases. It's a grey area, and
it's like saying that English doesn't have glottal stops. I mean, right? It does. It's just not. They're not common enough to show up in linguistic aids. Yeah.
So and some people have broken down American pronunciation and not included it. So, but it's one of those things. Who's to say? So in a way, you're right. Yes, it doesn't have that. American English doesn't have that sound, but it is a grey area, so it does depend who you speak to. And there is no body that says this is what English is, as we've talked about in the past. So that's why we have these kind of grey areas. But I would say that officially, although we can't really say officially, it doesn't have that sound. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway.
Yeah, in terms of...
Yeah. So Gaspar's saying hello. Hello to Gaspar. How are you doing?
Hello.
Now, let's see. If you can read this, you are a nerd. That's what it says on my mug. So, yes, you are a nerd. A lot of people in this chat are probably nerds. If you want to get one of these mugs, I think you can. I might be able to make it appear in the chat, or there might be a link below the video. So yeah, thanks for that comment. Now Jorge says yes. The sound k is velar, not alveolar or dental, right? Mm-hmm. Now, if I'm remembering these terms correctly. So, I think velar is what I was getting at. I just couldn't remember that term. It's the back of the top of the mouth. Yeah, the back of the roof of the mouth. Whereas alveolar is like just behind the teeth. You have that kind of ledge just behind it. It's not really on my big mouth, but it's kind of hear it normally, in my mouth at least, it kind of goes down then. It's that ridge just behind the teeth. Whereas, obviously, and dental obviously is where you touch the teeth. So is dental. Think, I think. And I think you're right. That is velar, a velar sound. Although not 100% sure off the top of my head. These are the kind of things that I look up and make sure I'm right before I make videos about them, as I have made videos about them. But off the top of my head, not always 100% sure.
No, that's right. Velar is the back of the roof of your mouth. Alveolar is the front of the roof of your mouth, right behind your teeth. And dental, obviously, is with the teeth. Yeah.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
Thanks. I understood the followed by I or e is tricky as I thought. Yeah. Great. Okay, well that's all the questions we've had so far. If we don't get any more questions, we might have to finish a little bit early. But it's good. That means we've finished teaching English. Everyone speaks perfectly now.
Yeah, we answered all the questions.
Our work is done. Great. Yeah, so let's see. Here we are. I can pin merchandise. So you should see that mug appear in the chat now or shortly, if it's available to buy in your country. If not, I guess you won't see anything. Yeah. Well, I'm going to drink some coffee while we're here.
Speaking of the pronunciation chart and the different zones and things like that, we do have an app.
Oh, right?
Yeah. The English Language Club app, which is on the Android.
It's only on Android. Yeah, it's only on Android now. I'm just going to bring it up for you. It's basically the phonetic chart, and you can click on the symbols. I've just remembered, actually, I've got a new phone. I think the app's on here, but I'm not sure. I've never used it on this phone. Yeah, it's basically just the phonetic chart. You can press the symbol, and it will make that sound. You'll hear me making that sound. Where is it? I don't think I have it. Yeah, like I said, I just literally got a new phone about a week ago, and I haven't got around to putting it on here yet. I thought it would go on automatically, but it doesn't appear to have. I'm going to have to fix that, because yeah, it is probably the best phonetics app for hearing the different sounds, because you literally just touch the sound and touch the symbol and it makes that sound. And I got the app made because I used to have I still have the video, the interactive phonetic chart, and you could, in that video, you could actually click on different parts of the screen and it would make the sound that corresponds to it. But unfortunately, YouTube removed the feature that allowed that to function properly. Strangely, though, the video still gets lots and lots of views, so that's great. And YouTube recently added another feature which allows you to add chapters in, which then breaks up the video. So I've added that in. So it's got it has now got an element of interactivity as well, even though it's not as originally intended. But yeah, I was disappointed that they took that feature away. So I decided to look into having an app made, and found a guy online who said, yeah, he could put it together quite quickly, quite easily. So it is a very simple app. It's very lightweight. It's not going to use up lots of battery or memory. Yeah, if you're looking up a word in a dictionary and you see the spelling, but you want to hear it sounded out, you can. It's perfect for doing that. I have showed it in a live stream before when I had my old phone, and I will do again in the future. It's just right now, it's not there.
I suppose I can show it on my phone. I have it on my phone.
Okay, yeah. Let's see. So Val says, I heard that the meaning of sentence changes when you put changes where you put the stress. Okay, yes. So there's the app. Now we're on a green screen, which I think is affecting the vowel sounds. The vowels are green, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so they'll not be showing up properly.
Oh well.
That's basically it. It's basically the phonetic chart. I'll bring it up. I've got it. I can make it come up here. There we go. It's basically that, and you can touch the symbol, and it will make the sound. Yeah. So let me go back to us. Yeah. So sentences that change meaning depending on where the stress is.
So, like for instance, and the meaning. Okay, so for instance, if you ask someone, "Did you take my pie?" You're asking, maybe there was a pie, maybe there were a few other things, and you want to know if they took the pie of all the different things. Like for instance, did you take my keys? Did you take my keys? Like, so if you ask someone to get you your keys, and you ask them to get it, or if your keys are missing and you say, "Did you take my keys?" Now you're asking a completely different question, right? You're accusing them of being the one who took the keys.
And also, in that case, then you stress the thing you're trying to find out. So, did you take my pie? You're asking if it was that person that you're speaking to. Did you, or was it someone else? But it's your pie that's missing. But you could say, "Did you take my pie?" In that case, you're wondering if it's the pie that's missing. Did you take my pie, or did you take my sausages?
Or if you're at a like a fair or something like that, and you ask someone to go and pick up your pie, and they come and bring you back a pie that you don't recognize. So like, are you sure you got my pie? Right? Like again, depending on what word you choose, or someone says, "Yeah, I got you your pie," and you say, "Did you get my pie?" Like again, like you're asking, "Are you sure about that?" So depending on what word you stress in a sentence, you're going to get subtle changes in meaning, sometimes not so subtle, the difference between asking someone if they did you a favor versus accusing them of something, right? But a lot of it has to do with context too.
Yeah. But also I'm sure that a lot of that mechanics must be very similar in a lot of other languages. So
yeah, there's...
Because I'm sure that I've sort of naturally used that sort of thing when speaking Spanish, and I've not felt like people have misunderstood me. So
some languages have very strict pronunciation requirements, so that the stress has to go in certain places of the sentence. So for some people that might be an entirely new skill. If you search for sentence stress, I believe it's not the same as the stress of a word, though again, changing the stress in a word sometimes changes its meaning. But there is some to this, and generally speaking, most of it has to do with how to speak. Instead of like trying to stress different words, it's just how to speak and have your sentences sound natural. Things like rising the tone at the end of a yes or no question. Did you take my pie? And yeah, or at the beginning of another kind of question, where did you take my pie? Right. So, yeah.
Okay. Hope that's helpful. Now, Dev's got here the American pronunciation of the word fraud. And it's interesting because it has the O sound, but followed by the colon, which makes it a longer sound. So that is not the same as the O on its own, like in the word not or got. So yeah, this makes it longer, like I was saying. So it's fraud. Yeah. Well, do you want to say it? Because he says, "Can you pronounce it?" And you're the resident American, Tony. Do you want to pronounce that for us?
Yeah. That's not the pronunciation spelling that I get when I look it up, but fraud. Fraud. How do you? Can you pronounce it again?
Fraud. So I say fraud. So the difference here is whether it's or. I'm saying or. And it's more R, right? Fraud. Does that make sense? Are you hearing that difference?
Barely. Fraud.
Yeah,
Fraud.
and this is where the the confusion is, because that symbol there with the o but long, that's not on our chart. That is not. It's not on the you know. It's a merger of this one, which is or, and this one, which is o. So, you know, it's yeah, that sound doesn't technically exist on the chart that we use, but yeah, I can understand why some you know American pronunciation would use that. It makes sense to me because it's just like a longer o, which is kind of what Americans say instead of o. So yeah, hope that's helpful. Yeah, so will you ever do a video? We've got a question from Amani Aslan, says, will you ever do a video on intonation to cover such things as stress and tonic syllables for transcription purposes? Intonation rises and falls are useful for transcription. So what I've said in the past about phonetics is, yes, we've done a lot of videos. I've done a lot of videos on phonetics, but I know that also, and that's attracted a lot of people who are studying phonetics specifically. But I've always, you know, aimed my videos and the channel at people learning English, and phonetics is a tool for learning English and improving pronunciation. So, although it's a subject you can get really deep into, there is a limit to how deep I want to go in the subject, because, like I said, I'm more interested in how people learning English as a second language can use it as a tool. But when we get into the academics of it, it's you know, it becomes a whole subject in its own right, and that's not really what the channel is about. Right. So maybe I'll do more about that. We will come back to making some some more phonetics videos in the future. Like we said, at the moment we're focusing on a series of grammar videos, so that's what we'll be focusing on for quite some time before going back to phonetics. So we'll have to have a think about whether that sort of thing will be useful. And I know that it is something that I've not really touched on. All we've really done is explain the chart, explain what the different types of sound are, vowels, consonants, and then talk about each one individually. We haven't really done much beyond that. So I do want to go a little bit deeper, but I'm not quite sure how deep yet, and it won't be for some time. So I hope hope that answers the question. I hope it's not too much disappointing an answer. But yeah, watch this space.
All right. Well.
Okay. Okay, I'm an English language student, and I use your videos for my phonology module, especially when I'm struggling with transcriptions. Okay. Yeah. So, you know, I wonder why. It sounds to me like, Amani, your English course is forcing you to sort of study phonology quite deeply. And like I said, you know, if your goal is to learn to speak English or communicate or write English, you know, to be able to use English, to learn English, then, you know, if you find it helpful, like I said, it's a tool. So if you find it helpful, use it. But I do wonder whether going that deep is that helpful, if your goal is learning English. So, but yeah.
I think maybe what they're referring to, because this is a different word. We don't use this word, I think, to mean what Amani means, transcription. Right. I think the word we think of as maybe transliteration, or trying to write one language using the alphabet or the symbols of another, which is often very helpful for trying to help people pronounce words. Like if you can write it in your own alphabet, so that that's the way you would sound it out.
Yeah.
And so that is a very useful tool. And so I can understand where they might be coming from here. Again, it just it's a tool. Some people rely very heavily on that when they're teaching a language. It's not something I've ever done, or not with English anyway. With languages that have very complicated alphabets, I have.
And also in some other languages, the tone is much more important. Although in English we do use tone and intonation to enhance the meaning, it's rare that you'll get two different words where the only difference is tone. Whereas in some languages, I think in Thai, you can have like 5 different words that are all the same word, just with a slightly different tone. So yeah, it's very different. But yeah, I guess writing something in whatever way you find it helpful, or whatever way you would recognize the correct pronunciation, is gonna be a useful tool. So yeah, I mean, I've definitely seen people using sort of arrows to say a word goes up at the end, like a question, and things go down. Little arrows to imply the intonation. But those things are not official, like in phonetics. There is like an official way of doing it in the IPA, at least. The IPA is a framework for that kind of thing. Although there are other things that I haven't really covered, like the stress. I definitely do want to cover the stress more, because that is something that you will see marked on a lot of words, but it's something that I just kind of left out to focus, because I wanted to focus on the actual individual sounds. Yeah, hope that's helpful. Okay, well, we've got to an hour now. We've crossed the hour mark. Time flies when you're having fun. So thank you very much for joining us today, and we will be here again next week. And hopefully by next week I'll have started doing some filming for the course. Look forward to telling you all about that. If you're not subscribed, make sure you click the subscribe button so that you get notified next week when we do go live. And give us a thumbs up if you're still watching. We really appreciate that. And we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.